All right, welcome to the first of its kind, world-changing manufacturers network. Lisa Ryan has her ears to the ground and her heart in the game. Get ongoing education and new connections right here with Lisa and the Manufacturers Network. Buckle your seat, listen, and spread the word. Here's Lisa.
Hey, it's Lisa Ryan, and welcome to the Manufacturers Network podcast. I'm excited to introduce you to our guest today, Joseph Fritz. Joe has been the executive director of the Investment Casting Institute since 2013. With over 35 years experience, Joe has contributed to a number of programs, including the Navy's Trident II, Phalanx, and Aegis programs, the Air Force's Joint Strike Fighter program, and Boeing 787 Dreamliner program. Joe holds degrees in engineering from the University of Connecticut and an MBA from Union College. Joe and I actually had the opportunity to work together when we were in Puerto Rico at his association annual meeting, and he was also kind enough to let me bring my mom with me. So we had a great time together. So Joe, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Lisa. And we did have a good time in Puerto Rico, and it was a distinct pleasure meeting your mother and having you speak at our event. You were extremely well received, and I had many people requesting that we share the recording of the event with folks on their staff so that they can learn from you about gratitude in the workplace.
Yeah, well, and it was almost like back in the day, back in the olden days when we used to be able to have live events. So, one of those.
It does seem like quite a long time since we've been able to do so.
Yeah.
The pandemic last year wiped out every live event that we had, with the exception of one training program that was conducted in February.
Wow. Well, share with us just a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into the details as far as what this last year has meant to you, your association members, and really what you're hearing in the industry right now. So tell us about you, Joe.
All right. Well, again, that's a loaded question. But as we could tell from your introduction, I have a very strong military design background, and that was really a big part of my career when I first got out of college, working through things until the end of the Cold War. And when the Berlin Wall came down, I was working as a design engineer for General Electric in their Naval Ordnance Division. And it was like, this bright young man better find something else to do without a Cold War to be building up armaments for. So I applied for a blind ad in the Wall Street Journal, and nobody ever gets a job on a blind ad. And they were looking for an engineer with aerospace experience and an advanced business degree. So a couple of my friends pushed me to apply for it, and I ended up changing industries completely and finding myself in the world of metals and material science. And since 1990, I have been working in the investment casting industry and parallel industries. I've stepped out and in a couple of times, but I became fascinated with technology and the science involved with creating precision metal components using this process to the point that I could actually say that I love the industry. It was around 2000 that the business colleague of mine was solicited my help in looking at and helping him prepare his presentation for applying for the job that I'm in right now. I got very excited about this. I go, Mike, this is the perfect job for me. And he laughed at me and he said, the only difference is I know the board of directors and you don't. So it was back in 2013. Mike picks up the phone and he calls and he says, hey, Joe, I'm planning on retiring. Are you going to throw your hat in the ring? And well, after some discussions and a series of interviews, I found myself as the executive director of the Investment Casting Institute. And we're a 501c6 nonprofit trade association. We have approximately 265 member companies throughout the United States and some international. And our focus is on bringing, first off, benefits to our members, especially the smaller members. We've got a couple of very large companies, but the smaller companies are the ones that really derive benefit from working with us. So we offer educational benefits. We try to work up discount programs to support them. We offer networking opportunities, and really big part of my job, I believe, is bringing people together, facilitating communication. And the ICI has afforded me that opportunity. In addition to focusing on our members, we also focus on the customer base. Part of our charter is to educate the customer as to the benefits of investment casting versus other metal forming technologies. Now, that's not to say that our role is to push investment. Quite often people will come to me looking for a referral to somebody who can make an investment casting for them. And when I look at their drawing or speak to them, I go, you don't want to use investment casting. This is better made as a sand casting or a die casting or a fabrication, depending on the configuration. So we try to not only bring people together, but make sure that they're going to be in good, long-lasting relationships. And lastly, which I view as the third leg of the stool of what we do, we have three legs on every stool, is sustainability is very important to us. So we work with young people. We have an associated trade association. It's a 501c3. It's a nonprofit, the Foundry Educational Foundation. And they work very closely with the schools and young people. And through them, we've worked to support their initiatives, as well as having direct contact with the schools on our own. I can often be found talking to a bunch of high school juniors and seniors, and sometimes junior high school kids, as well as going to the universities. And it's very fulfilling when you put a spark in somebody's eye and they come and talk to you afterwards. It's one thing to talk about the process and the training and education that gets involved with it. But when you start passing out parts and components that show examples of what you can do with this process, it sometimes ignites a fever in some of the students. And that's a great thing. I've been doing this now going on to 8 years. And there are kids that I met in junior high schools and in high schools and in college, and they keep in touch with me and let me know what they're doing. And they're smart because they're learning how to network right from the start. So there's some goodness there, and it's very gratifying to do what I do right now.
Oh, well, there's so many different ways we can go in this conversation. Number one, I didn't know about your stalking your current job for 13 years till the other guy retired. That was pretty good. And succession planning was already in place. But I really like what you talked about the last time with sustainability and bringing new people into the industry, because with all of the manufacturers and manufacturing associations that I work with, that seems to be the main thing that they struggle with is how do you bring these new generations into the workplace? And from you, not only starting earlier, going into high schools and stuff, but giving them that physical component, something that they can hold in their hand, and building those relationships with those people that continue to keep in touch with you. So obviously that's working. So how are you, not only as a person, but as an industry with your members, communicating that same philosophy as far as connecting with the newer generations coming in?
First off, I'd like to point out that the industry clearly has identified that there's a need for sustainability. Every year we conduct a house business report. In fact, we're currently collecting survey results for our 2020 house business report. It's a year in review. But I can go year after year, and I can tell you that the number one concern is attracting, training, and retaining new employees. And what we've seen in recent times, and when I say recent, I'm showing my age. Recent, I'm talking the past 10 years. But over the past 10 years, we've seen much greater difficulty in retaining those employees. I've heard stories of from foundries where they've hired someone, they show up late for the first day of work, and then they never come back again. I had spoken to one foundry, and this is a very high-tech, very clean foundry, excellent benefits, where they have over a 90% turnover of new employees in the first year, which we've never seen that before. Historically, you go back to when I entered the industry, people would get in and you'd see people going into companies, new hires, minimum of 2-year commitment, if not longer. But what's a very curious thing is when I walked into my first investment casting foundry in 1990, I noticed that the majority of the people that I was dealing with were my contemporaries or older, okay, but mostly my contemporaries. I don't want to say it's a sad thing, but the concerning thing is that when I walk into a foundry today, most of the people I see are my contemporaries. And you would think that you'd see a lot more young people in the industry. I personally have tried to sit back and try to understand what that is. And some people say, oh, it's the millennial phenomenon, or it's people don't want to get their hands dirty. We're becoming a service economy. And I hear all those comments. The United States was built on manufacturing, and manufacturing is our future, but it's a changing and evolving future. So you take a look, what I've done is I take a look at what's exciting these young kids today. And one of the big things is additive manufacturing. I go every high school, and a lot of the junior high schools have 3D printers. And these kids are clamoring to those classes. And I think part of it is because it's not just an academic thing. You could put things into play and build something. And the fact that you can do it in class and combine some of your teachings involved with that, I think they get excited about that. So what I try to do, at least when working with these young people, is try to make the connection, because additive manufacturing is a very important part of what we do. Now, some people view printed metal products as a competing technology to investment casting, and in certain aspects it is. But you print more than metal. You print plastics, resins, polymers. There's all sorts of stuff that you can print. And it all plays a role in what we do. Since the 1990s, for example, additive manufacturing was largely used for doing prototype work, where we would print a pattern instead of injecting a wax. And maybe I should give you a high-level view of how our process works. In effect, in an investment casting process, which is also called the lost wax process, you start with a wax pattern, which looks like the finished product that in the same configuration of what you want to make in metal. You take that, and typically you take several of them and assemble them onto a wax bar, something that we call a sprue, and build a cluster of parts. Then they take that and they dip it into a ceramic slurry and back it up with a stucco, let it dry, and then they repeat till you build a laminated ceramic shell around all the waxes. Then they remove the wax. You melt it out. You fire the mold so it becomes hard, and you bring it to a temperature that the metal it'll accept the metal easily, and you pour the metal into the ceramic mold. You break the shell off, cut the parts off, and clean them up, and you have a finished metal product. Well, in normal production, you will build a metal tool to inject the wax into to make those wax patterns. But in prototype development, it's very costly if you've got to go build a $30,000 or $100,000 or a $300,000 tool to work on a design that's changing. So you would generally get a CAD file, and you would print back then it was a simple stereolithographic pattern, an SLA we call it, to replace the wax pattern and build the shell around that. You can make parts. The customer can put them in their engine or their automobile or so forth, and do evaluations on it, modify the designs until you get to a point that you have a stable design that you are willing then to go cut metal on and build a tool for. So that's kind of where it first got introduced to our industry. You look at it today with the evolution of the additive manufacturing technology, people are printing patterns for low rate production to replace waxes. Again, you're not going to build a tool for a run of 20 parts.
Right.
So it's still used for prototyping. It's used for low rate production. But what you're also finding is now you can print ceramics. So instead of printing a wax pattern or a plastic pattern to dip into a shell, some people are actually printing the shells themselves with all the internal passages right out of the chute. Now, is this a disruptive technology? It's more of an enabling technology because the process is slow. It's not suitable for high rate production, and it's costly. But there are a lot of benefits from it. And one of the things I try to do when putting the spark in these young kids is show them some printed patterns and show them the transition and let them know that it can lead to lots of things. It also helps when you talk about the opportunities and the availability of positions and the long-term prospects. I'll tell you, I've seen people who have entered the industry with high school degrees who are now general managers and vice presidents of companies because they've done what it takes, they've put in the effort, and they've done very well with it.
Have you reached out to, this is reaching out to the kids, but what about guidance counselors or teachers or anything getting into the schools for things like manufacturing day? Because it's one thing to get the kids inspired, but we also need to change the conversation with the parents, with the guidance counselors, so that they're not so focused on the 4-year college degree. Because as you just demonstrated with somebody with a high school diploma, they could be running a plant as part of their career path.
Right. And we do that. In fact, it doesn't stop with them. It also, a lot of what we do to support the integration of students and keeping the students is also help educate our members and the foundries. It's full stem to stern. But we do attend career days, manufacturing days. I had mentioned the Foundry Educational Foundation. They run an event every November, which we attend and support. I have personally spoken with career counselors and teachers in the schools that I've been invited to go in to speak at. I have also spoken with not PTAs, but the various school districts that are looking to get back into some of the more basics, realizing that the curriculum we have today is really strayed away from the trades. Strayed. I mean, it's a very different world. Case in point, I went to a school with our business administrator, Nora Giambra. You've met Nora.
Oh yeah.
And we went there to talk to these kids at a junior high school in Jamaica, Queens, New York. And we get there, and it's a gigantic school, and the kids were amazing. It was probably the most attentive group we ever spoke with. Then afterwards, I'm talking with the instructors and some of the counselors there, and they were saying, well, we used to be a VOTEC school, but now it's basically reading, writing, and arithmetic, but we'd like to get our foundry back up and running. I go, you have a foundry? And they took me for a tour, and they have a foundry that those kids are hungry to get in and use. And right now, it's just basically used as a storage area for props for the theater group. So I know they're taking steps to bring that online, and we have offered our technology and our services to help them out in any way we can. So I think there's a recognized need among the academic community. The very fact that we were invited in and then they made a point of showing me what they want to do. I think that there's an issue connecting with the parents.
Right.
I mean, I'll tell you, my father, even with me, my father goes, you want to be smart, you want to get a college degree, you want to work with your mind and not your hands. You know, my father, first generation American, and he really had a vision for my future. I was somebody who always enjoyed working with his hands, and there are a lot of kids out there that do. I think that part of my going to higher education was because it was my father's dream. I don't regret it at all because I still get my hands dirty, and mostly in my garage rather than in the workplace. But having a desire to manufacture and see things made, it's not something that is inbred into you or something that you are learned or is forced upon you. You either like seeing things come together and build things and make things and design things, or you don't.
Right.
And really, that's something that has to be nurtured. And quite often I have seen kids who really want to do this, and, oh, but my father wants me to be a doctor. Or,
Right.
but no, my mom is really thinks I should be a lawyer. And I always ask, what is it that you want to do? Because that's the key thing. You have to appeal to their interests. You can't force an interest upon anybody. And one of the things I always tell these kids, I go, what is it that you love to do?
Right.
Pick what you love to do and make that your career goal, your career objectives. And as the old saying goes, you'll never work a day in your life.
We look at from when your father was getting started and he wanted you to go to college so you could have a quote unquote better life than he did. But unfortunately, we've had 2 generations of everybody going to college. Now these kids are coming out with tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt for either something that they don't want to be doing because mommy and daddy told them to go to college, or something that they can't find a job in their chosen degree. So turning it around and saying, listen, you have a stable job with something that you love to do, working with your hands, great benefits, very little debt that you will amass by going directly from high school to a tech school and directly into the trades like that. Mm-hmm. So it's just really changing that conversation, that the one that we were just talking about was 2 generations ago or a couple generations ago, where college was where you could, and I don't want to say that you could actually get something from college, but there's so much competition now, and we don't have enough people that are being exposed at that young age to say, wow, this is cool. I can work with my hands. This is what I want to do. And having mom and dad be okay with that.
And that's very true. That's very true. But that's not to downplay the importance of college graduates in this field as well. You need the engineers, you need the accountants, you need the marketing people, but the real main force, the key people that make this industry strong and great are the people who are there actually doing, the people who have a passion for it, the people who focus on quality, the people who are trying to improve things, and hopefully that's stem to stern, from the person who was hired to push the broom to the guy who's running the corporation. It would be great if everybody had that passion. But right. It's the people on the shop floor that really make things happen, because they're the ones who are going to put quality into a product, and they're the ones who are going to recognize when a product is lacking in quality before anybody else does.
What are you seeing as far as what some of your members are doing? You've shared what you've done to change that conversation and to attract people, but are there some best practices that you've heard from your members? Are they doing something else that's unique that might be helpful to somebody tuning in today?
First off, one of the things that we see a lot of our members doing is duplicating what we do, but they go to their local schools, their local high schools, because there are kids that aren't going to go on to college, and they try to make an appeal to them as far as we have opportunities, we have an industry, and they invite them in for a tour. Bringing young people into a foundry setting, or even the suppliers to the industry, people who make the tools and dies, people who build equipment, people who process and manufacture direct materials. Bringing these people in to show them what you do and let them see engaged workers. But it's not all about work. There's always a social aspect to varying degrees in any organization. And it's important that, hey, let's take a walk by our cafeteria. Let's, it doesn't hurt to walk by and let them see a communications board that shows what social activities are going on. Work is more than work. And in many regards, work it's a family. People who get into a company, stay with a company a long time, relationships are built, and it really makes working that much more pleasurable to be able to enjoy the people you're working with, to be able to help the people you're working with in and out of work and so forth. So that exposure is a big thing. Yeah, of course, there's always salary and benefits. These things are important, and those are extrinsic benefits. Those are the things that will typically get somebody to get up in the morning and come to work and start their day. But getting them engaged, that's an intrinsic benefit. It's got to come from inside somebody. It's out of the interestingness of what they're doing, their desire to be in the environment. And it's important that companies find their unique ways to touch the intrinsic nature that lies within each of us. I mean, a lot of people have no interest at all in being in a foundry or doing anything, so they'll never touch that person.
Right.
But finding that spark in the young person who wants to make a difference, even talking about the markets, you bring somebody into your operation and say, hey, we are manufacturing aerospace components, and somebody might be very interested in jet engines or space flight. They might be interested in the military aspect of things. Other people may have an interest in biomedical. And if you're running a foundry that does orthopedic implants, or you're making castings for medical equipment and devices, highlighting what you do besides the process. Talk about all the people you touch.
Yep.
In the United States alone, pre-pandemic, we were a $6 billion industry. Last year, the sales fell to about $4.6 billion in the United States, which is about a 23% decline. Look at it globally, it's a $14.3 billion industry worldwide. Pre-pandemic, that number dropped to just below $12 billion. But the industry touches every aspect of life. And you may realize it or not realize it, but jewelry you're wearing, odds are, was made with investment casting. I had mentioned orthopedic implants. I had mentioned the plane you flew in, the defense equipment that keeps us safe, the turbocharger in your dad's hot rod. There's a wide variety of things. The oil and gas industry is very dependent on this. So showing young people the far reaches that your foundry has, or your operation has. It doesn't have to be a foundry. This can apply to any industry. Letting these young people know that what you're doing is going to help all these industries and focus on that. That's just as important as the work at hand, because, we're all multidimensional. All right. We're not just interested in, I want to make castings. Well, of course not. Artwork. Every time you drive by a town center and you see a memorial, a statue that's made out of bronze, that's an investment casting. The art community is a gigantic community. You don't know how many artists are employed by art foundries. It is absolutely amazing. So somebody will say, well, gee, I'm interested in art and sculpting. I'm not interested in science and engineering and manufacturing. There's opportunities.
Sounds like it's really starting the conversation at a much younger age than people think. Like you had mentioned, working with the trade and tech schools, of building those relationships. I had one of my foundry clients that they were having a company meeting and they were shutting down the foundry for the day. So they figured, hey, it's safe. Why don't we have a bring your family to work day? And they were able to, the managers are like, well, how excited can these guys be? I mean, they're on the line all day doing the same thing. But the pride that they showed of, this is what I do and this is what I make. And there was probably that small percentage of their children that they were walking through the foundry thinking, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. But if they have no exposure talked about relating it to the printed additive manufacturing, the printed, all of these different things. And do you want to be involved in aerospace? Do you want to be involved in art? But actually showing that, inviting them to your plant, showing the process. This is where you'll work. This is what you'll do. This is the immediate gratification of what comes out of here and the parts that you're contributing to. That's how we get people to come in and, like you, fall in love with an industry and don't want to leave. And they're not coming in sight unseen, not having any idea what they're getting into and ghosting you by lunch. So.
No, that's very true. And I'll tell you that having the open house, bringing your kids to work, when those opportunities are there, it does something. Because I will tell you, there are many foundries that I visit where the father and the son are working, and the grandfather had retired from there. It's almost like it becomes a family business, but it becomes a multi-generational opportunity because of the multifaceted nature of it, the excitement, the fact that you touch so many things. And I think a lot of it, like father, like son, or like mother, like daughter, you have to be politically correct.
Right.
The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. And there are great opportunities here. And why would you not want to share that with your children? Why would you not want them to see what you do, to see that there's not only opportunity, but there's tremendous opportunity? You don't have to be somebody who handles molds and pours metal, even though you may love doing that. It might be the only job for you, but you bring them into, and you show them how proud you are about what you do, but they'll see what everybody else does. And they're seeing more than a foundry. They're seeing, like I say, a family, a well-run business that has a social aspect to it and so forth. It's a family, and they get to see that. And there's a feeling of security when you're in that type of environment. And a lot of young people want security. A lot of young people want to feel that they have a future. And I think that's the important thing, one of the important things that we have to highlight, that this has a future. This is not an industry that's going to die. It's an industry that grows. We have grown nonstop in this industry over the past decade, with the exception of the pandemic.
Right.
And I think largely because it's such a diversified industry that when there might be a decline in oil and gas, you might see things picking up in aerospace, or you might see things picking up in automotive when there's a decline in food processing equipment.
Right.
You look at orthopedic implants right now, it is thriving off the baby boomer market.
Absolutely.
But it's also finding its way into the young athlete market, because they have done, the designers of these products have been focused more and more on on minimizing the evasiveness of the surgeries that they used to implant these things. And they've worked on making these implants last longer. So younger people who might get injured in a sporting event would be more open to using these things, having an implant done. So that market is growing because of the baby boomers, but it's also picking up because of the general acceptance among a younger population. So the diversity has kept this industry growing.
Well, Joe, it has been, I could talk to you about this all day. And the nice thing about it is, whether you're listening and you're in a foundry or just in general manufacturing, all the things are equally, as far as reaching out to younger generations and working with your local tech schools. And I know that you're probably as inspired and as passionate about your industry. You're going to go a long way, as Joe has shared with us. So, Joe, if somebody did want to connect with you to learn more about investment casting or what you're doing at ICI, what's the best way for them to do that?
You could contact us either via calling our office, which is in Montvale, New Jersey. The phone number is 201-573-9770. the automated message will give you my extension. You hit that, it'll come right to my cell phone. So that's the best way to get a hold of me if you want to speak to me personally. Or you can go to our website and learn all about the process. We have lots of materials in the public domain. We publish a magazine, which is the world's only monthly publication dedicated to investment casting. And that's available right off of our landing page. That's called Incast Magazine. So I invite you to come to our website, which is investmentcasting.org. O-R-G. So all one word, investmentcasting.org. So give me a call or check out the website. My email's on the website as well.
All right. Well, Joe, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, it's been a real thrill. Thank you very much for inviting me.
You're welcome. I'm Lisa Ryan, and this is the Manufacturers Network Podcast. See you next time. Thanks for listening. Hey, do me a favor. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. Also, feel free to share the podcast with your friends and colleagues so we can grow the network and connect more fantastic folks just like you. You can either go to the website at manufacturers-network.com or share the podcast on your LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or wherever you and your industry friends hang out. The bigger and faster we grow this network, the stronger and deeper community we will have. I appreciate you. Thank you.